When my son placed the apartment keys in my hand 3 days before his wedding, I felt my throat tighten. He didn't know those keys were already mine. Neither did his bride-to-be, or her mother who sat across from me at that very moment, sipping tea in my living room like she owned the place. "Mom," Daniel said, his voice bright with that particular kind of happiness only a man about to marry feels. "Sarah and I want you to have this. A place of your own, close to us but not too close, you know." He laughed, and Sarah reached over to squeeze his hand. Her diamond ring caught the afternoon light streaming through my kitchen window. I looked down at the keys. The metal was warm from his palm. My palm. Because 6 months ago, I'd bought that apartment with money my late husband left me. Money Daniel knew nothing about because I'd kept it separate, kept it safe, kept it mine. Just in case. "That's very thoughtful," I said slowly, measuring each word like flour for bread. My voice didn't shake. I'd learned a long time ago how to keep my voice steady when my heart was breaking. Sarah's mother, Linda, set down her teacup with a delicate clink. "We thought it would be perfect for you, Margaret. The building has a lovely community room, and there's a small garden in the back. Sarah picked it out herself." She smiled, but there was something in that smile. Something sharp beneath the sweetness, like a knife wrapped in silk. "Before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand how we got here. Daniel was my only child. His father, Robert, died when Daniel was 15. A heart attack that took him in his sleep, quiet and sudden as a door closing. We'd been happy, the three of us. Robert worked construction, came home with dust in his hair and stories about the crew. I worked part-time at the library, and in the evenings we'd sit together at the kitchen table while Daniel did his homework. After Robert died, everything changed. Not all at once, but slowly, like winter creeping in. The life insurance money wasn't much, but Robert had been smart. He had a small investment account I didn't know about until the lawyer read the will. $50,000, plus the house was paid off. I put that money away. Didn't touch it. Didn't tell Daniel. He was grieving his father, struggling through high school, and I didn't want him thinking about money when he should have been thinking about algebra and prom dates. I kept working at the library. I made it full-time. I learned to fix the leaking faucet myself, learned to change the oil in the car, learned to be both mother and father. Daniel went to community college, then transferred to a state school. Got a degree in business. I found a good job at a marketing firm downtown. And then, 2 years ago, he met Sarah. She was pretty in that careful way some women are. Everything coordinated, everything planned. Her hair was always smooth, her makeup always subtle, her clothes always pressed. She worked in HR at a tech company and talked about creating positive workplace culture and optimizing employee engagement. I tried to like her. I really did. But there was something about the way she looked at my house when she first visited. Her eyes had moved across the worn carpet, the faded curtains, the old furniture Robert and I had bought when we were newlyweds. I saw her nostrils flare slightly just for a second before she smiled and said, "What a cozy home." Cozy. That word people use when they mean small and outdated. Her mother was worse. Linda came to dinner once, early on, and spent the entire evening talking about her own house, the renovated kitchen, the marble countertops, the smart home system her husband had installed. She kept touching Sarah's arm, saying things like, "When you and Daniel get married, you'll want something modern, won't you, sweetheart?" Daniel didn't notice. Or maybe he did and chose not to see it. Love makes us blind to certain things. The engagement happened last spring. Daniel took Sarah to the restaurant where Robert had proposed to me 30 years earlier. I found that sweet, that he wanted to honor his father's memory that way. Sarah posted 17 photos on social media within an hour. Planning the wedding became Sarah and Linda's full-time project. They'd come over with binders and fabric samples, talking about centerpieces and seating charts. I'd make coffee, offer cookies, sit quietly while they decided everything. Daniel worked long hours and trusted them to handle the details. "Your opinion matters too, Margaret," Linda said once, but her eyes said something different. I didn't fight them. What was the point? It was their wedding, their day. I was just the groom's mother. But then 3 months ago, Sarah mentioned they were looking for an apartment. Their lease was ending, and they wanted to buy something together. Start their marriage in a place that was truly theirs. The market is brutal right now, Sarah said, scrolling through listings on her phone while we sat in my kitchen. Everything decent is so expensive. That's when the idea came to me. Or maybe it had been there all along, waiting. I told them I needed to run an errand and drove to the real estate office across town. The apartment building I'd been watching for years, a small, well-maintained place with good bones and a fair price, had a unit available. Second floor, 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors that needed refinishing but were solid underneath. I bought it with cash. Put it in my name only. Didn't tell a soul. I told myself I was being practical. Smart even. This way, if things went wrong, if the marriage failed, if Sarah turned out to be the person I suspected she was, Daniel wouldn't lose everything. The apartment would be safe. He would be safe. I'd seen too many young couples destroy themselves over property disputes. I watched my own cousin lose her home in a divorce, watched her spend years rebuilding from nothing. I wouldn't let that happen to my son, but I didn't expect them to find the same apartment. It happened by accident, or so I thought at the time. Sarah and Daniel went to an open house in the neighborhood, and the agent mentioned there was another unit in the same building that had just sold. Shame, the agent said. It was a great deal. Someone bought it in cash and didn't even negotiate. Sarah became obsessed. She drove by the building 3 times that week. Looked up the ownership records online, but they hadn't been updated yet. Started calling it the one that got away. Then, 2 weeks later, Linda called me. "Margaret, I have wonderful news," she said, her voice sugary sweet. "I've been talking to the owner of that apartment Sarah loved, and they're willing to let Daniel and Sarah rent it for now, with an option to buy later." Isn't that perfect? My coffee went cold in my hand. "The owner contacted you?" "Well, not exactly. I did some digging, made some calls. The property management company put me in touch. The owner wants to remain anonymous, probably for tax reasons, you know how it is, but they're very reasonable. The rent is fair, and after a year, Daniel and Sarah can purchase it outright." I felt my chest tighten. The property management company, the one I'd hired to handle the legal paperwork and keep my name off the public listings until the county records updated. They weren't supposed to talk to anyone. That's generous, I managed, isn't it? Sarah is over the moon, and here's the best part, Margaret. Linda paused, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "We've decided to give them the apartment as a wedding gift. My husband and I will cover the first year's rent, and then we'll help them with the down payment when they're ready to buy. That way, they start their marriage debt-free, in a beautiful home." My hand gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. "You shouldn't have—" "Oh, it's our pleasure. Sarah is our only daughter, and we want her to have the best. You understand, don't you? A mother's love?" She said it kindly, but there was something underneath. A message. "We can provide for them. Can you?" I told her it was very kind and hung up before my voice could betray me. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The house was too quiet. It had been too quiet since Robert died, but now the silence felt different. Heavier, like it was waiting for something to break. I could tell them the truth. Walk into Daniel's apartment tomorrow, sit him down, explain everything, show him the deed with my name on it, watch the confusion cross his face, then the understanding, then maybe the gratitude. But what if it wasn't gratitude? What if he thought I was manipulating him? What if Sarah convinced him I'd done it to control them, to keep them dependent on me? I'd heard Sarah talk about her ex-boyfriend's mother. "She was so possessive," Sarah had said once, rolling her eyes. Always inserting herself into their relationship, always trying to make him choose between them. It was toxic. If I revealed the truth now, would I become that mother in Sarah's stories? So I said nothing. I watched Linda write a check to the property management company, my property management company, for the first month's rent. I watched Daniel hug his future mother-in-law, his eyes bright with relief and gratitude. Watched Sarah post photos of our first home, with captions about how blessed she was to have such supportive in-laws. The plural hurt. In-laws. As if Linda had already replaced me, the wedding preparations intensified. Sarah and Linda chose everything: the venue, the flowers, the menu, the music. Daniel asked my opinion once about the cake, vanilla or chocolate. And when I suggested lemon, Sarah wrinkled her nose. Lemon is so old-fashioned, she said. We're going with vanilla bean and raspberry. It's more elegant, I smiled and nodded, folded my hands in my lap like a good, quiet mother of the groom. But 3 days before the wedding, Daniel showed up at my door with those keys. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, and something in his voice made my stomach drop. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd done his homework as a boy, where Robert and I had shared our morning coffee, where I'd signed the deed to the apartment with a pen that felt too heavy in my hand. "Sarah's been talking to her mom," Daniel began, and I felt the air leave my lungs. "And we think it would be better if you moved closer to us. Not with us, obviously, but nearby." "Nearby?" I repeated. "The building we're moving into has a unit available on the first floor. Small, but perfect for one person. And here's the thing, Mom." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "We can help you afford it. Sarah and I have been saving, and Linda and Greg are willing to chip in. We'll cover the rent for the first 6 months, give you time to sell this house." The room tilted slightly. "Sell the house? Mom, come on! You don't need all this space. It's too much for one person, and the maintenance costs must be killing you. This place is falling apart." He said it gently, kindly, like he was helping me see reason. I looked at my son, my beautiful boy who used to build blanket forts in this living room, who'd learned to ride a bike on this driveway, who'd sat on this porch and cried the night his father died, and I saw a stranger wearing his face. "This house isn't falling apart," I said quietly. "I maintain it. I know you try, but Mom, be realistic. The roof needs work. The furnace is 30 years old. And what happens when something major breaks? You're living on a library pension. Let us help you downsize, start fresh. It makes sense. Start fresh, as if 30 years of memories were clutter to be thrown away. And the apartment?" I asked. "The one you're giving me keys to?" Daniel smiled, relieved I was listening. "It's perfect. Ground floor, so no stairs. The rent is $800 a month, but like I said, we'll cover it until you sell. Then you'll have money from the house sale to live on. You might even have enough left over to travel, do things you've always wanted to do. $800 a month. For a 1-bedroom unit in the building I owned, the building where their 2-bedroom apartment, the one they thought they were renting, had a mortgage payment of 0 because I'd paid cash. I should have laughed. The absurdity of it should have broken something loose inside me, let the truth spill out. But instead I felt very calm, very clear. "That's very thoughtful," I said again. Those same measured words. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. No pressure. We just want you close by, you know? Sarah really wants us to be a family." He squeezed my hand, and his palm was warm, just like when he was little and afraid of thunderstorms. After he left, I sat alone in the kitchen as the sun set. The golden light turned everything amber, the worn countertops, the old refrigerator Robert had picked out, the cabinet where I still kept his favorite coffee mug even though I couldn't bring myself to use it. They wanted me to sell this house, move into their building, pay them rent to live in my own property, and they thought they were being generous. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Margaret Chen had handled Robert's estate and the apartment purchase. She was sharp, practical, and didn't ask unnecessary questions. "What exactly are they proposing?" she asked after I explained the situation. "They think a mysterious landlord owns the building. They want to rent the 2-bedroom to my son and his fiancée, then rent me a 1-bedroom. Eventually, they plan to buy the 2-bedroom from this anonymous owner with help from the bride's parents." Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then, "So they're planning to use money from their families to buy an apartment from you without knowing it's you?" "Yes." "And you haven't told them?" "No." Another pause. "Margaret, I have to ask, What's your goal here? Because if you want my legal advice, you should disclose ownership before the marriage. It could get complicated otherwise. I watched a sparrow land on my windowsill. It pecked at something invisible, head tilting left, then right. What if I don't disclose? I asked. Then you're technically their landlord. They'll pay you rent through the property management company. When they try to buy, the sale would have to go through you. Eventually, the truth comes out. She paused. But Margaret, why would you want that? Because I want to know who my son is marrying, I said. I want to know what happens when things don't go their way, when they can't control everything. Margaret sighed. That's a dangerous game. Maybe, but it's my property, my money, my choice. Then my advice is to keep the management company as a buffer. Make sure all communication goes through them. Don't sign anything personally. And Margaret? Her voice softened. Be prepared for this to blow up in your face. The wedding was beautiful. I'll give Sarah that. The venue was a restored barn with string lights and white roses everywhere. Sarah wore a dress that probably cost more than my first car, and Daniel looked handsome in his navy suit. He cried when she walked down the aisle, and I felt my throat tighten because he looked so much like Robert at that moment. I sat in the front row, wearing the dress I'd bought for the occasion, simple, elegant mother of the groom appropriate. Linda sat across the aisle in something designer, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. During the reception, Linda gave a speech about how she'd gained a son, how Daniel was already like family, how blessed they were to welcome him into their lives. Everyone clapped. She didn't mention me once. When it was my turn, I kept it short. Talked about Daniel as a boy, about Robert's love for him, about hoping they'd build a beautiful life together. I didn't mention the apartment. Didn't mention anything except love and hope in the future. Sarah hugged me afterward, and her perfume was expensive. Something French and floral that probably came in a tiny bottle. Thank you, Margaret, she whispered. I promise I'll take good care of him, as if he were a thing to be cared for. As if I were handing him over. The next week, they moved into the apartment. Daniel called me, excited, talking about furniture deliveries and paint colors. You should come see it, Mom, once we're settled. I will, I promised, but I didn't need to visit. I knew every inch of that apartment. I knew which floorboards creaked, which windows stuck in humid weather, where the morning sun hit the bedroom wall. I'd walked through it a dozen times before I bought it, imagining Daniel's life there, imagining him safe. 2 weeks later, the property management company sent me the first rent check. $1,200 from Sarah and Daniel, $800 from Linda and Greg on my behalf, money they thought was going to some anonymous landlord, money that was actually just moving from one account to another in my name. I deposited the check and felt nothing. The first 3 months were quiet. Too quiet. Daniel called every Sunday, our standing tradition since he'd moved out for college. We'd talk about work, about the weather, about small things that didn't matter. He sounded happy, settled. He'd mentioned Sarah in passing. Sarah made this amazing pasta last night. Or, Sarah thinks we should get a cat. I noticed he never asked if I'd thought about moving. Never mentioned the ground floor apartment again. I wondered if they'd forgotten, or if the offer had an expiration date I'd missed. Then November came, and everything changed. It started with a phone call from the property management company. Mrs. Hayes, we've received a maintenance request from your tenants in 2B. They're reporting a leak under the kitchen sink. B. Daniel and Sarah's unit. Send someone to fix it, I said. Standard protocol. Of course. Just wanted to confirm you'd cover the cost, since it's a plumbing issue. Should be around $200. After I hung up, I sat with that information. A leak, something simple, fixable. But it was the first crack in their perfect new life, and I wondered how they'd handle it. The maintenance was done within 2 days. Professional, clean, handled. The kind of service a good landlord provides. But a week later, Daniel called on a Thursday. Not Sunday, Thursday. Mom, we have a problem, he said, and I heard stress in his voice. Real stress. The landlord is raising our rent. My hand tightened on the phone. What? We got a notice today. Starting January 1st, the rent goes up to $1,500 a month. That's a $300 increase, Mom, in less than 6 months. We can't afford that. I hadn't authorized any rent increase. I'd given explicit instructions to the management company. Standard lease terms, no changes without my approval. Let me call you back, I said. I dialed the management company immediately. Who authorized a rent increase for Unit 2B? There was typing on the other end. Let me check. Okay, it looks like this came from our main office. Annual market rate adjustment. The units in that neighborhood have increased in value, and we're bringing your property in line with comparable rentals. I didn't approve of that. Mrs. Hayes, it's in your contract with us. Section 12C. We have the right to adjust rents to fair market value to protect your investment. You can override it, but we recommend against it. You'd be losing potential income from my son. Override it, I said. Keep the rent at $1,200. Are you sure? That's well below. I'm sure. I called Daniel back. I think there might have been a mistake. Let me look into it for you. How would you look into it? He asked, confused. I still have connections from the library. People who know people. Let me make some calls. The relief in his voice broke something in me. Thanks, Mom. Sarah's been really stressed about this. Her mom thinks we should just move, but we love this place. It feels like home, you know? That night, Sarah called. Not Daniel. Sarah. Margaret, we need to talk about something, she said, and her voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Sharp, pointed. Of course. What's wrong? This rent increase. Daniel thinks you can fix it, but I don't understand how. And honestly, I'm starting to wonder if we made a mistake with this apartment. She paused. Linda thinks we should have bought something from the start. She and Greg offered to help with a down payment, but we chose this place because Daniel thought it was special. Now I'm not so sure. I felt my jaw tighten. Every rental has issues sometimes. It's not just the rent. The sink leaked. The heat is uneven. The building manager takes forever to respond. And we found out the owner won't even meet with us. Everything goes through this management company like we're not even important enough for a conversation. Her voice rose slightly. Linda says that's a red flag. Anonymous landlords are usually corporations or foreign investors who don't care about their tenants. Foreign investors. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so bitter. Have you talked to Daniel about this? I asked carefully. Daniel is too nice. He doesn't want to rock the boat. But Margaret, between you and me? She lowered her voice, intimate now. Confiding. I think we need to start looking at other options. Linda found a condo in a better neighborhood. Brand new construction, 2 bedrooms, modern everything. If we moved, we could actually build equity instead of throwing money away on rent. Throwing money away. On my property? That sounds practical, I managed. I knew you'd understand. You've always been so sensible, she sighed. Don't tell Daniel yet, okay? I want to present it the right way. But I wanted you to know because I'd love your help convincing him when the time comes. He listens to you. After she hung up, I sat in my dark kitchen and felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me. They wanted to leave. Sarah wanted to leave. And she wanted me to help her convince my son to give up the home I'd bought for him. I called Margaret Chen again the next morning. I need to know my options, I said. Legally, if they break the lease early, standard lease break fee, usually 2 months' rent. But Margaret, if you want them to stay, you could waive it. You're the landlord. What if I don't want them to leave, but I don't want to force them? Then you make staying more attractive than leaving. She paused. What exactly are you trying to accomplish here? I looked out my window at the garden Robert had planted, the roses he'd chosen because I loved them, the stone path he'd laid himself, one summer when Daniel was 8 and helped by carrying small rocks in his red wagon. I'm trying to protect my son, I said. From what? From making a mistake he can't undo. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. That's not really something you can control, you know, even with all the money and property in the world. I know, I whispered. But I have to try. I decided to do something I hadn't done since they moved in. I went to see the apartment. I called Daniel on a Saturday morning. I'd love to take you two to lunch tomorrow. And maybe see your place? I know you've been asking. The happiness in his voice made my chest ache. Really, Mom? That's great. Sarah will be so excited. She's been wanting to show you how we've decorated. Sunday afternoon, I drove to the building I owned and parked in a visitor spot. My hands were shaking slightly as I walked up the path I'd walked a dozen times before they moved in. The lobby looked the same, clean, modest, well-maintained. Daniel met me at their door with a hug. He smelled like the cologne I'd given him last Christmas. And for a moment, he was 7 years old again, wrapping his arms around my waist. Come in, he said, pulling me inside. The apartment was transformed. They'd painted the walls a soft gray, put up floating shelves with books and plants, hung curtains I recognized from an expensive home store downtown. The furniture was modern, carefully chosen. It looked nothing like the empty space I'd purchased. It looked like a home. Sarah appeared from the kitchen, wearing an apron that said, "But first coffee," in cursive script. Margaret! Perfect timing. I just made mimosas. We sat on their new couch, gray velvet, probably $1,000, and Sarah walked me through every detail. Where they'd found the coffee table. Why did they choose this lamp? How Daniel had insisted on a TV that was too big for the space, but she'd compromised. She was trying so hard. I could see it in every gesture, every practiced smile. She wanted me to like her, to approve, to see her as the perfect wife for my son, and I almost let myself believe it. Then Linda arrived. I hope you don't mind, Sarah said. Mom wanted to stop by. She brought appetizers. Linda swept in with a cheese board and air kisses, and suddenly the apartment felt smaller. She made the same tour Sarah had just given me, but with little comments peppered throughout. Of course, if you had more counter space, you could really entertain, she said in the kitchen. These floors are lovely, but they do show every scratch, she noted in the living room. 2 bedrooms is perfect for now. But when grandchildren come, she trailed off meaningfully. I watched Daniel's face. Watched the light dim slightly with each comment. Watched him glance at Sarah, who nodded along with her mother like a programmed response. Over mimosas and expensive cheese, Linda brought up the condo again. I'm just saying, the market is still favorable for buyers. My realtor friend found this amazing place. 2 beds, 2 baths, granite counters, in-unit laundry. The HOA fee includes a gym and a pool. She looked at me. Margaret, don't you think it would be smart for them to build equity? All eyes turned to me. I could have ended it right there. Could have said, they're already building equity. I own this building. This is Daniel's inheritance. Could have watched Linda's face transform from smug confidence to shocked silence. But I looked at my son, and I saw something that stopped me. He was looking at Sarah, waiting for her reaction to whatever I said. His whole body angled toward her, like a plant bending toward light. And I realized with sudden painful clarity that it didn't matter what I wanted. It didn't matter what I'd planned or protected or purchased. He'd already made his choice. I think, I said carefully, that Daniel and Sarah should do whatever makes them happiest. It's their life to build. Linda's smile tightened. Of course, but sometimes young people need guidance. They don't always see the big picture. Sometimes the big picture isn't as important as the present moment, I said, and I wasn't looking at Linda anymore. I was looking at the apartment, their apartment, with its careful decorations and chosen colors and evidence of a life being built, day by day, decision by decision. Sarah squeezed Daniel's hand. We're happy here, she said softly. At least for now. At least for now. Those 4 words hung in the air like a question mark. I left an hour later, claiming I had plans. Daniel walked me to my car, and in the parking lot, just the 2 of us, he seemed younger somehow. More like the boy I remembered. Thanks for coming, Mom. It meant a lot to Sarah. She's trying very hard, I said. I know. Her mom can be... He trailed off, searching for the right word. A lot? I offered. He laughed, relieved. Yeah, a lot. But Sarah's not like that. She's more independent than Linda gives her credit for. He paused. I know you 2 haven't really connected yet, but I think you will. You're both important to me. I hugged him. breathing in that cologne, memorizing the weight of his arms around me. "I just want you to be happy," I said into his shoulder. "That's all I've ever wanted." "I know, Mom. I am happy. I really am." I drove home with tears in my eyes that I didn't fully understand. Not sad tears exactly. Not angry tears. Something else. Something complicated and tangled and too big for words. That night, I made a decision. I called the property management company and left a message. Regarding Unit 2B, no more rent increases. Lock the rate at $1,200 for the duration of their tenancy. And prioritize any maintenance requests. I want that unit treated as if it's the most important property in your portfolio. Then I called Margaret Chen. "I need you to draw up something," I said. "A document that transfers ownership of the apartment to Daniel, but only under certain conditions." "What conditions?" "If the marriage lasts 5 years, the apartment becomes his outright. If they divorce before that, ownership reverts to me and she gets nothing." "That's actually smart," Margaret said. "Protect him and protect your investment. But he'll find out eventually. When will you tell him?" I looked around my kitchen. At Robert's mug. At the table where we'd shared 30 years of meals. At the window where I'd watched Daniel play in the yard. "When he's ready to know," I said. "Or when he needs to know. Whichever comes first." Winter came, and with it a cold that settled into the old bones of my house. The furnace Daniel had mentioned, the one he'd said needed replacing, started making noises in the night. Groaning, clicking sounds like an old man clearing his throat. I called a repairman. He was honest, at least. "You've got maybe one more winter in this thing," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "After that, you're looking at a full replacement. maybe $5,000. I thanked him and wrote a check for the repair. After he left, I walked through the house room by room. Really looked at it for the first time in months. Daniel was right. The place was aging. The carpet in the living room had a path worn into it from 30 years of footsteps. The wallpaper in the bathroom was peeling at the corners. The kitchen cabinets were the same ones Robert and I had painted together when we first moved in, and the paint was chipping now, showing the wood underneath. But it was still standing. Still solid. Still home. I thought about selling. About taking Daniel's advice. Moving into that ground floor apartment, living below my son and his wife, paying rent to myself through a management company while they paid rent to me 1 floor up. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. Instead, I got an estimate on a new furnace. Started a list of repairs. Small things I could handle myself. Bigger things I'd save for. If they wanted me to leave this house, they'd have to wait until I was ready. Christmas came, and for the first time in Daniel's life, we didn't spend it together. "Sarah's family has this huge tradition," he explained over the phone, apologetic. "Her whole extended family comes to Linda and Greg's house. I can't really skip it?" "Of course not," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "You're part of their family now. We'll come by on the 26th. I promise." They came on the 27th, actually. Sarah had a migraine on the 26th. They stayed for an hour, exchanged gifts in my living room. I gave them a set of expensive cookware. They gave me a sweater that was 2 sizes too big and a candle that smelled like synthetic vanilla. "Linda helped me pick it out," Sarah said. "She said you'd love it." I smiled and thanked them and lit the candle after they left, watching the chemical-scented smoke curl toward the ceiling. In February, Daniel called with news. "Mom, Sarah's pregnant." The world stopped, tilted, righted itself. "That's wonderful," I said and meant it. Despite everything, I meant it. "How far along?" "Just 8 weeks. We weren't planning it this soon, but we're excited." "Surprised, but excited." He paused. "Sarah wants to tell you something." There was rustling and then Sarah's voice. "Margaret, I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but I want you to be part of this baby's life. I want them to know their grandmother. Their grandmother. Singular. As if Linda wasn't already planning a nursery in her house." "I'd like that very much," I said. After we hung up, I sat with the news. A grandchild. Robert's grandchild, though he'd never meet them. A piece of us continuing forward. And suddenly, the apartment, My secret, my protection, my insurance policy felt different. Not like a trap or a test. More like a foundation. Something solid underneath them as they built this new life. But Linda had other plans. It started slowly. Comments at doctor's appointments that Sarah mentioned in passing. Suggestions about baby-proofing that somehow always led back to the condo. Mom says stairs are dangerous with a newborn, Sarah told Daniel one night. I know because he called me afterward, stressed and confused. She keeps saying we need more space, that this apartment isn't suitable for a family. But Mom, we can't afford a down payment right now, not with the baby coming and Sarah taking maternity leave. What do you want? I asked. I want to stay here. I love this place. Sarah does too, when her mom isn't in her ear. But I don't know how to make Linda stop pushing without causing a fight. I closed my eyes, saw the path forward splitting into different directions, each one leading somewhere I couldn't quite see. Do you trust Sarah? I asked. Of course. Then talk to her. Not Linda, Sarah. Ask her what she wants, away from everyone else's opinions. Including mine. There was silence on the line. Then, when did you get so wise? Around the time I became someone's mother, I said softly. 2 weeks later, Sarah called me directly. Not Daniel, Sarah. Can we meet? She asked. Just us. Coffee or something. We met at a cafe halfway between my house and their apartment. Sarah looked tired, her face slightly puffy in that early pregnancy way. She ordered decaf and picked at a muffin while I waited for whatever was coming. I need to be honest with you about something, she finally said. And I don't know how to say it without sounding terrible. Try, I said gently. She took a breath. My mother is controlling, she always has been. Growing up, she made every decision for me. What I wore, who I was friends with, what college I went to, what job I took. I thought getting married would give me freedom, but she's just transferred all that control onto Daniel and me. I stayed quiet, letting her continue. The condo, the constant criticism of our apartment, all of it. It's not really about the apartment. It's about her needing to be the center of everything. And I'm scared that when the baby comes, it's going to get worse. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't want to raise my child the way I was raised. Always second-guessing myself. Always looking for approval. She looked up at me, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. Daniel says you're the strongest person he knows. That after his dad died, you built a whole life by yourself and never complained. I need to learn how to do that. How to stand up. I reached across the table and took her hand. It was smaller than mine, softer. The hand of someone who'd never had to fix a leaking pipe or change a tire in the rain. Strength isn't about never needing anyone, I said. It's about knowing what you need and asking for it. Knowing what you won't accept and saying so. But how do you do that without ruining everything? Without pushing people away? I thought about the apartment. About the secret I'd kept for almost a year now. About all the ways we protect the people we love, and all the ways that protection can become a cage. You start small, I said. You make one decision that's yours. Then another. Then another. Eventually, people either respect those boundaries or they don't. And if they don't, you have to decide what matters more. Their approval or your peace. Sarah wiped her eyes. Did you ever have to make that choice? Every day since Robert died, I said honestly. Every single day. We talked for another hour. About motherhood and fear and the weight of other people's expectations. About Linda and Daniel and the baby coming. About the apartment and whether it was enough or too small or just right. I love that apartment, Sarah said quietly. It's the first place that's ever felt like mine. Well, ours, Daniel and me. Not my mother's vision or some designer's idea, just ours. Something loosened in my chest. Something I'd been holding tight for months. Then stay, I said. Stay and build your life there. Let Linda have her opinions. You don't have to live with them. Sarah looked at me, really looked, and I saw recognition in her eyes. The recognition of one woman who'd fought for her space in the world, seeing another who was trying to do the same. Will you help me? She asked. Stand up to her? I'll do better than that, I said. I'll show you how to stand up for yourself. The showdown came 3 weeks later, At Sarah's baby shower. Linda had planned the whole thing, of course. Rented a private room at an expensive restaurant. Invited 40 people, most of them her friends. The color scheme was yellow and gray, neutral, modern, expensive. I arrived with my gift, a handmade quilt I'd been working on since Sarah told me about the pregnancy. Each square was fabric from something meaningful. A piece of Daniel's baby blanket, a scrap from Robert's favorite shirt, fabric from my wedding dress. I'd sewn it all together by hand, late at night in my quiet house. Linda took one look at it and her nose wrinkled. How rustic. Sarah, we can put this in the closet. The nursery has a very specific aesthetic. I watched Sarah's face. Saw her open her mouth to agree, to smooth things over, to keep the peace. Then she stopped. Actually, Mom, I love it. It's going on the crib, Linda blinked. But sweetheart, it doesn't match the bedding set I ordered. Then we'll change the bedding set, Sarah said, her voice steady. This quilt is from Daniel's grandmother and his father and his mother. It's family history. That's more important than matching. The room went quiet. 40 women holding champagne glasses and tiny sandwiches, all watching this small, crucial moment. Linda's face went through several expressions before settling on a tight smile. Of course, if that's what you want. It is, Sarah said. Then she looked at me. Thank you, Margaret. It's the most meaningful gift we'll receive. Later, in the bathroom, Linda cornered me. I don't know what you said to her, she hissed. But Sarah has been different lately. Distant, argumentative. Maybe she's just growing up, I said mildly. She's making mistakes. That apartment is too small for a baby. They need the condo, but suddenly she's refusing to even look at it. Daniel would agree if she wasn't being stubborn. I turned to face her fully. Have you asked Daniel what he wants? Or do you just assume you know better? Her eyes flashed. I'm trying to help them. Someone has to think practically. They're thinking practically. They're building a life they can afford, in a home they love, without debt they don't need. That sounds pretty practical to me. You would say that, Linda said coldly. You've never had much, so you don't understand what they could have. The words should have stung. Maybe they would have 6 months ago, but standing there in that expensive bathroom, wearing my off-the-rack dress and drugstore lipstick, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. You're right, I said quietly. I've never had much, just a home I own outright. I built my savings, a son who calls me every Sunday because he wants to, not because he has to. And now, a daughter-in-law who trusts me enough to ask for help. I paused. That feels like enough to me. I left her there and went back to the party. That night, Sarah and Daniel came to my house, together. It was late, almost 10 o'clock. We wanted to talk to you, Daniel said. They sat on my couch holding hands like teenagers. We've made a decision, Sarah said. We're staying in the apartment. We're going to raise the baby there. And we're setting boundaries with my mother. That's wonderful, I said. There's more, Daniel added. We want to try to buy the apartment. We know the landlord won't meet with us, but maybe you could help? Use those connections you mentioned. We can't afford much of a down payment, but we're willing to work out whatever terms make sense. Even if it takes years. They looked at me with such hope, such trust, and I almost told them everything. Almost. Instead, I said, let me see what I can do. After they left, I sat alone in the dark and called Margaret Chen. It's time, I said. Draw up the sale papers. Fair market value, but structure it so the payments are manageable. I want them to feel like they earned it. And when do you tell them you're the seller? I looked at the photo on my mantle. Robert and me on our wedding day, young and hopeful and terrified. When the papers are signed, I said. When it's already theirs. When they can't give it back out of pride or guilt or confusion. The closing took 6 weeks to arrange. Margaret Chen structured it perfectly. A private sale with terms so reasonable they almost seemed too good to be true. 10% down, the rest spread over 15 years at a fixed interest rate below market value. Why would the owner do this? Daniel kept asking. It doesn't make financial sense. Maybe they have their reasons, I'd say. Sometimes people value security over profit. They scraped together the down payment. Sarah's parents offered to help, but Sarah refused. "We're doing this ourselves," she told them. Daniel picked up weekend work. Sarah sold some jewelry from her grandmother. They made it work. I watched them sacrifice and save and felt both pride and guilt twist together in my chest. The closing was scheduled for May 15th. A Tuesday morning at Margaret Chen's office. I told Daniel I had a doctor's appointment that day. He offered to reschedule, to come with me, but I insisted I was fine. Just routine blood work. At 9 a.m., I sat in Margaret's waiting room while Daniel and Sarah signed papers in the conference room down the hall. Margaret had arranged it so I wouldn't be visible and wouldn't accidentally run into them. At 9:45, Margaret came to get me. "They've signed everything," she said. "The apartment is legally theirs. Now comes the hard part." She led me to the conference room. Daniel and Sarah sat at the long table, laughing about something, surrounded by papers. They looked young and happy and exhausted. When I walked in, Daniel's face lit up. "Mom, what are you doing here? Is your appointment over?" "There was no appointment," I said quietly. I lied. The happiness dimmed. Confusion replaced it. "I don't understand." I pulled out a chair and sat across from them, folded my hands on the table like I was in a business meeting, not about to change everything. "The apartment you just bought," I said. "I need to tell you something about it." Sarah glanced at Daniel. "Okay, I'm the seller," I said. "I bought that building 9 months before your wedding. The apartment is mine. It was mine. Now it's yours." The silence was so complete I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Daniel spoke first. "What?" "I bought it with the money your father left me. Money I'd been saving. I put it in my name, hired a property management company to handle everything, and I never told you." The words came out steady, rehearsed. I'd practiced this speech 100 times in my mirror. You were our landlord?" Sarah's voice was small. "This whole time?" "Yes, the rent we paid. The lease we signed. The maintenance requests." Daniel's face was cycling through emotions too fast to track. "You knew everything." "Yes, why?" It came out almost as a shout. "Why would you do that?" This was the question I'd been dreading. The one I'd asked myself 1,000 times in the dark. "Because I wanted to protect you," I said. "Both of you." I'd seen too many young marriages fall apart over money and property. "I wanted you to have something secure, something safe, no matter what happened." "So you lied to us?" Sarah's voice shook. "You let us struggle to pay rent to you? You watched us stress about rent increases and repairs, and you knew the whole time?" "I never raised your rent. I kept it below market value. Every repair was handled immediately. That's not the point." Daniel stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "The point is you didn't trust us. Didn't trust me. You played games with our lives?" "It wasn't a game," I said, and my voice cracked. "It was never a game. Then what was it?" he demanded. "Some kind of test? Were you waiting for us to fail?" "I was waiting to see if she loved you," I said, looking at Sarah. "Or if she loved what she thought you could give her." Sarah's face went pale. "You were testing me?" "Not testing. Watching. Protecting my son from someone who might have wanted him for the wrong reasons." I paused. "I was wrong." "You're damn right you were wrong," Daniel said. "Sarah has been nothing but good to me. To us. And you sat there at our wedding, at our apartment, at the baby shower, knowing this whole time." He ran his hands through his hair. "I can't even look at you right now. Daniel—" "No." He held up his hand. "You don't get to explain this away. You lied for almost 2 years. You manipulated us. You made us feel grateful for generosity that was fake because it was our own." He stopped. "Wait, the down payment. The money we just gave you is going into a trust for your child," I said. "All of it. Every rent payment you ever made, every dollar from today, it's all for the baby. I never wanted your money. I wanted you to be safe." Margaret Chen cleared her throat. "If I may, there's one more document." She slid a paper across the table. "Mrs. Hayes had me draw this up before you signed. It's a deed transfer contingency. If your marriage ends in divorce within 5 years, Ownership reverts to her, and Sarah receives no claim. If you make it 5 years, the apartment is yours completely, no strings attached. Sarah read the document, her hands shaking. Then she looked at me with something I couldn't quite read in her eyes. "You still don't trust us," she whispered. "I trust that love is hard," I said. "I trust that marriage takes work. I trust that my son deserves to be protected, even from his own choices." I looked at Daniel. "Your father and I almost didn't make it past our 5th year. We were young and stupid and we hurt each other. But we chose to stay, to work. And those next 25 years were everything." My voice broke. "I wanted you to have that choice. Not to lose everything if you made a mistake in choosing when." Daniel sat back down slowly. "You should have told me." "I know." "You should have trusted me to build my own life." "I know." "I don't know if I can forgive this." The words hit like a physical blow. But I nodded. "I know. They left without another word. Didn't take the trust documents. Didn't take anything but the keys. The keys that had always been theirs. Even when they didn't know it, Margaret Chen sat with me after they were gone. That went better than I expected," she said. I laughed, but it came out like a sob. "Better? They didn't throw the keys at you. They didn't tear up the papers. They're hurt and angry, but they took ownership. That's something." "I've lost my son," I whispered. "No," Margaret said firmly. "You've given him the truth. What he does with it is up to him." 3 weeks passed. Daniel didn't call on Sunday. Didn't call at all. I went to work at the library. Came home to my empty house. Fixed the squeaky cabinet I'd been meaning to fix for months. Planted tomatoes in Robert's garden.